Hello and welcome to another episode of Raw Chatter. I am your host speaking, Vicky Midwood, health optimizer and the addiction eliminator. And I have a guest with me today. I am absolutely over the moon that in her busy schedule, Dr. Jeanne Reteif is joining me to share her story about what got her into creating the incredible skincare products that she now is selling to us both online and in store, pretty much globally. So over to you, Dr. Jeanne. Tell us about what got you into making skincare, because that's not how it started, is it?
No, not at all. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. I'm so happy to talk to you. No, my PhD is in international criminal law and the laws of war. So I had my own consultancy and practiced in that and human rights related fields for about 17 years. And then I was diagnosed with panic disorder. Um, and I have been struggling with my panic a little bit the last few days, which is why you will see me slurring my words.
Right.
But I mean, you don't get more real than that. So um, it was due to this diagnosis and essentially the complete denial and utter ignorance in ignoring it that led to a super breaking, if you will. Um, and that's actually how Figgy was born. Because when you say panic disorder, people think it's somebody with that has panic attacks, but it's much more than that.
And that's what I
Um,
wanted you to share a little bit with, because I think we're so blasé about certain labels and people think they know what something means without actually really understanding it. So can you explain to the people watching and listening just what your symptoms actually were, and then what led you to even going to be able to get that diagnosis?
Yeah, for me, it was a very long journey to the diagnosis because I'd struggled with anxiety for as long as I can remember. I've been super, super stressed. I
Right.
come from a very traumatized background and a background with a lot of generational trauma, a lot of undiagnosed mental illness, um, which led me to a very dark place when I was 20, 21.
Yeah.
And I ended up in a psychiatric facility because I had tried to take my own life because I just didn't know what to do with myself. It was just a very dark situation to be in. And I don't think I got the right kind of help
Right.
that I
Right.
needed. Um, and that kind of scarred me towards the idea of seeking help.
Which makes
So,
sense. I think so many people will be able to identify with that. If you have a not great experience and you don't feel confident in asking for anything else, you kind of then are left with just handling it or dealing with it, aren't you?
yeah, for
Mm.
sure. And combined with that was this whole narrative of seeing what it had done to my family, and I don't wanna be like that. I don't
Right.
also want to have that. So,
Mm.
I think I just came out, decided this is not what I want for my life, and kinda just forged forward, you
Right.
know? And that's what's actually so significant to me about my diagnosis is I think when I came out, I went into this absolute survival mode. I have to make it work.
Mhm.
I'm just going to suppress this. I'm going to do my best in any way. And when I found myself in a space and time in my life where I was the most secure, the most calm, the most supported, a loving husband who got me out of this situation, well, in a good place financially, loved my career,
Right.
that's when my worst panic started. Because
Right.
I think then my body was at a space where it was almost allowed to remember.
Wow. And I'm just going to stop you there because I think that's really poignant, because people would automatically think that if now you're suddenly feeling safe and secure, probably for the first time you're allowing yourself to actually recognize all is well, you would think that all of your symptoms would disappear. But to hear you say actually quite the opposite was the case, and then understanding just what was going on in your body, this is such a powerful learning lesson, I think, for everybody. So suddenly you started to get these symptoms.
Yeah. So the symptoms were with me for most of my life, like the underlying symptoms that still come with your panic. Things like really bad gut issues. Like once or twice a month, I'd have food poison like type of events.
Right.
I had really bad migraine attacks, where you have the aura, you're vomiting, you feel bad, you're down for 3 days. I was always shaking, always overthinking, always stressing, having a hard time sleeping, night terrors. But these all were normal to me. This was how I was wired, right?
Yeah.
And then the evening that I had my first panic attack, I was away for work. I was in a very bad area, no access to hospitals, ambulances, and such. I'd sat down in my hotel room and my vision went away. And at first, I thought I was having a migraine attack because that sometimes happens to me. But then my vision went away completely. So I didn't just see the black and purple spots, it just went away.
Wow.
And that disorientated me because so I think it hyped my body up into an immediate kind of alert response. And then I started shaking. My right hand started shaking really uncontrollably. I lost complete feeling in my left arm and hand, in my toes, in my feet. So it was hard for me to kind of walk towards the phone. And then I started having the really bad heart palpitations, and I just knew in that moment that I was for sure dying. And I had this whole flash in front of me of all the people I didn't speak to and the things I didn't apologize for and who I hadn't phoned in a while. And I just thought I was having a stroke and I was going to kind of pass out before I even reached the phone.
My God.
All in all, I think it took about 4 to 5 hours to get me into a hospital room,
Wow.
convincing the doctors I was not on drugs. I
Oh my
didn't
God.
know what was happening to me. And that led to months of medical tests upon tests. That was frustrating in the beginning, but that I'm grateful for now because it meant they did their due diligence in making sure nothing was physically
Right.
out of place, and they could be very sure of the diagnosis of anxiety. And then there was a further road to diagnosing the type of anxiety disorder I had.
Wow. So, I mean, it sounds like the most scary, the way that you've described it, because I'm guessing that you were on your own the whole time that this was happening to you. And to be that isolated with all of this going on is probably the most frightening experience of your life, was it?
Yeah, I mean, to this day, this happened in 2015. To this day, and even then, I was traveling a lot for work. I cannot stay in hotel rooms.
Right.
There's just
Wow.
something about the once that hotel room door closes, walking down that long hallway with no
Right.
windows, and then once that door closes, it just brings back something bad. So if I'm like on the first floor and the window can open or something, then I'm okay. But I really do struggle. And the best way that I can describe this kind of experience is all of us in some way are afraid of dying, or uncomfortable with it, at
Yeah.
least. There are
Yeah.
many questions that we have about it that we can't answer. Some of us may have had near-death experiences, and you know how traumatic that can be. And having a panic attack is literally confronting death over and over and over again, because it's not just this once. The nature of a panic disorder is that this happens to you, so it's gonna happen again. You just don't always know when or where or why.
Wow. And that in itself is terrifying, isn't it? Just knowing that it could kind of happen at any time. And thank you so much for making it really, really clear that it's not just somebody overreacting to something and just getting a bit het up, because I think that is what a lot of people think when they hear the terms panic attack. And it's a darn scary thing, as you've said, if you feel that degree of fear, and it's as close as you can get to dying. It's terrifying.
Yeah,
So
it
once
really
you
is.
finally did get that diagnosis, I mean, for some people, it's really helpful to know that they have a thing and it's tangible and it's real. For you, did that diagnosis help you or not so much?
I know. I was furious when they gave
Right.
me this diagnosis because I was absolutely convinced that the doctors were not equipped enough to understand what was really wrong with me. So they just settled on it's just stress. But, then I also didn't understand that this is not just stress. I never knew something like an anxiety disorder existed. Like, I want to be very clear. Obviously, I live with this, so I really do understand and I really have empathy and sympathy for it. And I'm not taking away from anybody's journey, but I was diagnosed with panic disorder before it was kind of in quote marks cool to have anxiety and before
Right.
everybody had anxiety, right?
Mm.
Um, it's different than stress. It's different than normal uncomfortable emotions. It's different than even chronic periods of high stress.
Right.
And I had to be educated on this. I had to be almost convinced that something like this actually existed. I mean, when I think back to it now, I think probably the entire first year of my recovery and therapy and meetings with my psychiatrist and everything, literally every single session started and ended with, but when am I going to be normal again?
Wow.
And this is impossible. Something like this doesn't exist. And then they would have to go through the whole story with me
Right.
and explain everything again. Yeah.
And I understand, because the fact that suddenly you've got this thing that you didn't even know was a thing, and then you've got to come to terms with, I'm going to have this for life and it's going to be recurring. And I guess automatically we want to believe that there is a cure and there's going to be an end to it. So to be told and then to actually accept on a knowing level is quite something. How did you manage to find somebody? Because finding somebody who actually understands this stuff and was able to educate you in it, I would imagine that in itself was a bit of a challenge.
I was very, very lucky because in South Africa, we actually have, okay, not public health, but private health, a very good system. And we usually have general practitioners or family doctors that follow you. Um, so my family doctor knew me for probably 10 years at that point, knew my entire medical history. And she herself struggled with anxiety. So she was able to refer me to the right specialists who were able to refer me to a very good psychologist.
Amazing.
But I will say this only happened in my 30s. This was when I had already been through a barrage of psychologists in my early 20s.
Right.
And what I learned from this experience and what I really wish I knew then was you can say no. Just because somebody's a psychologist and has a medical degree does not mean you have to be okay with doing therapy with them. You are sharing some of the most intimate, soul crushing parts of your life. If
Yeah.
you don't feel you can connect to this person, then you have the right to ask for a second opinion and you have the right to choose to try a different psychologist or therapist. And I think if I had known that when I was younger, I would have been in a position to try harder, I would say, to help myself
Right.
because I would have felt like there are more options. And I very much then felt backed into the wall and like I had no power.
Yeah. I think that's such a powerful message to take to the younger people who are listening, or to parents of younger people who may be seeking help, to help them to recognize that you don't have to say yes to the first person that you're offered. If they don't feel like they are aligned with you, then it's okay to say no. But as you say, you have to know that that's even an option. Um, but you found somebody, and obviously that meant, I mean, it's such a different story, unfortunately, with us in the UK, as I'm sure you're aware. We used to have that system where you did have a family doctor who did know your history. Now it's potluck who you get seen. If you get seen by anybody, often it's just a telephone call, and they don't even have time.
I get it.
Yeah, they don't even have time to look at your last appointment notes, never mind your health history.
Yeah.
But the fact that that was the system then really enabled you to find the right kind of help without you, suppose, having to go through all of the background and everything. So you were getting the help, and so then this is in your 30s. Were you still then working as hard in your career, or did you take a bit of a break from it, or how did it pan out?
No, to give you an idea of how completely ignorant I was to this, when this happened to me, as I said, I was traveling for work. And because it was such a disorientating experience, and because I was shaking so much, I literally couldn't open my wallet for my credit card because I was shaking too much. So I couldn't communicate to somebody how to contact my emergency contact or my husband. I still to this day don't know how they tracked him down, but he flew in to come fetch me. So it happened, say, for example, the Thursday night. By the Friday morning, he was there to pick me up from the hospital. We flew back, landed in Johannesburg, and there's a hotel attached to the airport where a lot of my meetings happened. And I walked straight over and went into my next meetings.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
But that sort of speaks a lot to the fact that what you said earlier, you decided you were going to push through and you were in survival mode and you were just going to carry on.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I was also obviously in such shock at what had happened to me because I don't think I knew what to make of it at all. And I just thought, okay, this is like old times. We're just going to push through it. And by Monday morning, I was going to go to my next meetings. And on my way to the next meeting, it happened to me again. And it kept happening to me for a period of 48 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in hindsight, I mean, from where I'm sitting, obviously I would be saying, well, that's your body clearly saying you need to stop, you need to slow down. Did you obviously finally listen to that message?
I wish I could say yes, but I didn't.
Right.
So everything about this to me became about being normal again, and nobody can know. Because I didn't want to be seen as less than or less effective as others. So my dear husband started canceling his meetings and flying all over the place with me so that I could stomach being on an airplane because I couldn't function normally at this stage.
Jeez.
I had a period of 2 weeks where I didn't eat at all because I was so afraid of a choking sensation and then not being able to breathe. So we just kind of mustered through that for 2 or 3 years. And when we immigrated to Portugal, that is when the honest breaking happened, where it was just no further. I can go no further. I can do no more.
Right.
And I think that's only when the true realization hit, which, if I look back at it now, is quite incredible. But it shows you how smart your mind can be at keeping you apart from the things that you don't want to see or acknowledge.
Right. Yeah. And that is quite a thing when you look back at it. But obviously, as you said, when you're in it, you can't see it. It's only with hindsight when you can kind of go, how the heck really did I make it through those 3 years? And I'm guessing that when you then moved and you're now in Portugal, was that the opportunity for you to actually just stop and take stock?
Yeah, it was, because then COVID happened, obviously, and everybody was home, and the kind of sponsorship and donor funds dried up, which is a large part of the funding for human rights projects. So I wasn't able to continue my work in the EU, which was the initial plan. So I had a lot of grieving to go through. I was grieving my country, the new move, my identity, loss of identity, because I attached my identity to the purpose that I had for
Right.
myself in life. This thing happening to my body that I don't have control over. It's so horrible to not be in control of your own bodily functions, the way your mind works, what you're thinking, because one big other symptom of the panic disorder is this absolute belief that you're going crazy, that you're losing your mind. Um, so I mean, by that stage, it was just at such a point, there were just so many culminating factors
Right.
that I had no other option but to stop and to say, okay, I have to do something different with my life. I have a 2-year-old, I have a husband, I have a new house, I need to learn a new language.
Yeah.
Something needs to change.
Amazing. So throughout that whole period, were you able to keep going with the help of any medication? Were you still seeing your therapist throughout all of that period of time?
So this was part of the additional stress. The fact that I wasn't, but I thought I was in a very good place, and I'd reached like a nice equilibrium in my medical care. And
Mhm.
now I had to change doctors. I had to get a new psychologist that
Right.
spoke English. I
Right.
had to have a new psychiatrist to follow me. That was stressful. Luckily, I found very good people, but I mean, this took a while. It wasn't instant. So it was a very lonely, isolating fight at that stage, for me to get through those initial kind of months here.
Right.
Um, it was very hard. I can't sugarcoat it. I would not wish this on my worst enemy. I never ever want to go through something like that again.
Wow. So from that, what got you into completely changing tack and deciding that you were going to go down the road of creating some kind of skincare?
So the thing is that I knew that if I had to change something, the first thing and the biggest thing I needed to change was my shame around this diagnosis. So whatever I did, it needed to be something that allowed me to speak about it and to take ownership of it.
Right.
And I also desperately needed something about this I could control, because there's so much about it I have no control over.
Yeah.
And, then I started learning about everything else that comes with it, the gut issues, the
Mhm.
IBS, the migraines, the insomnia, and the really sensitive skin.
Yeah.
So I am South African. I knew about rooibos tea and how amazing it is in skincare. I knew this was something that could help, and this could be something that is something healing I can hopefully put out into the world. I wanted to do it wholeheartedly, so I didn't want to just package something. I wanted to make it and decide what the formulation looked like, what's the percentage. So I needed to go back to school to do my certificate in cosmetic chemistry. And this
Amazing.
was a lifeline to me
Right.
because it kept my mind busy.
Yes.
And the worst thing I think you can do for somebody with anxiety is leave them alone to their own thoughts.
Yeah.
You do
Right.
not want to be in that space.
Yeah. It's dangerous in your head.
So I needed something that could challenge me and keep me busy and give me something to get up for every day. Like suddenly I had exams to prepare for and I had worksheets to hand in, and um we had agreed that I was going to take this path, and we're basically going to take an income break for me for a year.
Right.
So there wasn't that pressure of, okay, everything I do has to have an income. And I really, really needed that. And I think it literally ended up saving my life in many,
Wow.
many ways.
So suddenly, from being this person who's dealing with human rights, you're now going into chemistry and devising
Yeah.
your personal formula for skincare that is going to help you, but also loads of other people with your skin issues. And so, tell us about the name of the company and how that came about, because I just love this story.
It's so silly because my favorite fruit is a fig. And I was outside one day eating a fig and wondering, what am I going to name this company? And this word figgy came up and it didn't want to kind of leave my mind. And I thought it was the silliest word ever. This would never work. And it just kept coming back to me. So I decided to research the symbolism of a fig, and it really stands for feminine energy and the fact that we are all co-creators of our own destiny. And it just felt like the perfect summary of my journey and what I wanted this to be for other people, especially the figgy soul part where we have our community for people like me. Um, and then plus figgy was just so fun to say. Like
Yeah.
it's almost impossible to be angry when you say it.
You can't say it without smiling, and I
Yeah.
think that's why I love it so much. When we first had a conversation and you told me the story, and then actually looking into the meaning behind it, I mean, no wonder it wouldn't leave your brain because it was like you are going to call your company this.
This is
And
it.
hence Figgy was born, and now you have gone online, but you are also in different countries as well, in physical brick and mortar premises, aren't you?
Yes. So we just launched our flagship store, the Figgy Boutique in Scotland 3 weeks ago. And we're online in the UK. We expect to be in some brick and mortar retailers in the UK by the end of the year.
Amazing.
We're at Target.com in the US, our own website, a number of other stores. Yeah, and there are some very exciting developments for brick and mortar there too.
And I think that this is, I mean, you just kind of nonchalantly say, oh, we're in Target, which is like huge. Yeah, but this is you kind of being you, underplaying what you're actually able to do. But the fact that you said that if you were going to do this, you were going to do it, and you were going to do it all in, and you were going to do it right. Hence, you went and studied chemistry and actually created the products yourself. So I'm intrigued to know, when you started creating the products, how did you manage to source a place to make them? Because I've got visions of you standing in your own kitchen putting this stuff together.
That's literally how it went. I have photos of me like concocting in my kitchen. That was a very long journey because I was very picky about it. Because in the beauty industry, it's extremely difficult to have access to the chemist.
Yeah.
From the manufacturer for many reasons. There are many like IP protections and all sorts of things. So I had to do a lot of work and negotiating and relationship building in order for me to be able to have a good enough a relationship that I could have those conversations and be part of those conversations. So it was a lot of trial and error. I think it took almost a year to choose a manufacturer because it takes time, because you have an initial meeting, you come up with an initial formula, they send you something that you can test, and then you can see if you like the way they formulate. So all this takes time to ship and to ship back and so on. So I was very fortunate to come to an agreement with my current manufacturer, which I just love them. The entire team is just so incredible.
And is this made? It is made in South Africa, isn't it? Because obviously that is where the Rooibos is. Your company is in South Africa, so it gets made there and it gets shipped then wherever it's going globally.
So the main company is actually in the US.
Oh, is it?
We manufacture in Taiwan, but the Rooibos is sourced and shipped from South
From
Africa.
South Africa.
Because it has the protected designation of origin. And I don't know, I may just be summing it up the wrong way, but maybe if you have any South African listeners listening, they will know. We know what is real Rooibos. So
Yeah.
it's very hard to find 100% real, honest South African Rooibos overseas. So it's sourced and shipped from a facility that's about 10 kilometers from my mom's house, actually.
Amazing. Incredible. So now, obviously, you are, I'm guessing, still managing your anxiety. Is that the right term? Do you manage it, or is it just something that you just have learned to live with?
Yeah, I shy away from any terms relating to managing anxiety or anxiety management because I often feel like the driver's seat shifts. you know.
Right. Which is
Sometimes
why
I'm
I asked you.
driving.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
it's not a term I like at all.
yeah.
Which is why I just wondered how you kind of do on a daily basis. Is it something that you're always thinking about, or is it just you get on with life?
No, I think mostly I get on with life, but the caveat to that is it's taken a lot to come to a point where I just get on with life. You know, there are many things that many balls I have to keep in the air every day to make sure that I am staying in a stable um ish position. Panic attacks will happen. Relapses are going to happen, but you start to learn your triggers and how to work with them. So, for example, I know I need to have some kind of physical exertion every day to
Right.
get rid of some of the additional stress. I have to eat properly. I have to keep enough protein, eat 2.5 to 3 hours apart, because otherwise I get shaky and nauseous, and that's a trigger. I
Right.
have to have a good bedtime routine. So it's easy to say, yeah, you just get on with life, but it's taken a minute to get to the point where I can say something as nonchalantly as I just get
I
on with
just do this.
life.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And
And
I'm
it's
guessing that was
different.
trial and error, was it? You
Yeah.
tried different things and you see what was working, and just, I guess, just even learning the triggers, because sometimes triggers will just come out of the blue, just throw you a little curved ball. And that's the thing with this kind of stuff, isn't it? It's not plain sailing. You are always learning what you need to do. And then I guess with some of the schedules that you've had with you flying here and there recently, have you still been able to do the things that you know you need to do, or has that been a
Oh
challenge?
no, I'm in an absolutely brutally horrible space at the moment. Like, all honestly, like, my sister passed away from addiction a month and a half ago. I have not dealt with that at all. Complete and total avoidance. I've just launched into being busy, busier, more busy, more busy. I haven't stopped traveling. I haven't stopped being in different time zones. And I think that's the hardest thing about learning your triggers is, one, accepting there are some that you will never be able to cure, because my panic stems from trauma.
Yeah.
Certain things happen that triggered the trauma that I would never know would perhaps trigger the trauma. And the
Yeah.
second is listening, because it's so easy to go into a space where you're saying, oh, you know what? No, I'm going to just take a little bit more of the airplane and a little bit more of the time zone and a little bit more of the overstimulation and a little bit more of the bad sleep. So, now I'm in a space where I know I am 100% heading for disaster and I need to figure something out
Right.
right now. Which is why this is my last podcast. I won't be doing anything for the rest of the week. I need to recalibrate and understand where I am at this phase and stage of my life. But it's hard. It's hard to see the world go on around you, and people. I know we don't always see what goes on for others behind the scenes, but from your perspective, functioning normally and handling stress normally and going through the ins and outs of life, and you feel like you always have this barrier to entry, it's so easy to always just want to overstep that limit and be normal, and then having to remind yourself, well, you are normal in your own way. You're
Yes.
just wired differently. um but yeah,
It's a challenge, isn't it? And I think you've explained, I think, really, really clearly that we have to sometimes just come to terms with something that we didn't particularly ask for, we didn't particularly deserve, but this is what we're at and this is how it is. And rather than fighting against it, it's a case of just learning how to live with it. And sometimes you're going to get it wrong and sometimes you're going to get it right, but it's always going to be there. And I think that is the challenge, but it also allows you, I believe, to be resilient and to be clear on your boundaries, which potentially perhaps you wouldn't have been had you been normal, whatever that is. Yeah.
yeah.
And I love the way that you described it, because what is normal anyway? As you say, you're just different to other people, but they will no doubt have their own things. And I think you also illustrated beautifully this desire that you wanted to keep it secret and not talk about it initially. And I'm sure a lot of young people particularly are going to resonate with that. And just hearing you say that that's kind of normal, but if you can find the right person that you feel comfortable with, that potentially could make the difference. And it potentially could have done for you earlier on, couldn't it?
Yeah, I really do think so. And if that's something that can help a younger generation, then I would be so happy.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, that launched into my journey and where I find myself
Yeah.
today. But that doesn't mean I would wish it on anybody else if they could avoid
Absolutely
it.
not. And you have now on your Figgy website, you have so many products and bundles and offers, which is awesome. And we'll put the links in the show notes. But you also mentioned that you have a community. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's the Figgy Soul community. At the moment, it's a monthly subscription that you can join, and it's online courses that I wrote and present based on my real lived experience with anxiety and panic disorder. So it takes you from the moment where you don't understand what's happening to your body and if you have an anxiety disorder or not, and just surviving those initial breaking moments to getting to a space where you have more equal foundations so that you can hopefully peacefully exist with it. But within the next month, this community will launch as a Facebook group,
Right.
which I will not charge for because Figgy Soul is more my effort in giving back, and also selfishly for myself to have community and a support network, and to also be able to learn from others.
Amazing. Absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. I'm going to ask you the question that I always ask a guest to finish off with. If there is just one thing that you would like the listener and the person watching to leave this podcast episode with, what would that be?
I think it would probably go back to what's been going on in my life at the moment, and that is to just take time before you react to something that somebody may have done or said, to just imagine what may be going on in their lives. We don't always know what's happening behind the scenes. We don't know the issues somebody's dealing with, the hurt, the struggles, the stress. That doesn't mean that a slight or an offense should be tolerated. It just means that there's a lot beneath the surface that we are not aware of. And we all have that moment that we wish others would just give us a little bit of grace for something we've done or said because it was triggered by something else. So imagine if you could pay that forward to somebody else.
Fabulous. I love it. So on that note, folks, I'm going to leave you, as I always do, saying thank you to my guest and to you guys. We only have one life as far as we know and one body. So please look after it because it is looking after you. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Thank you so much, Dr. Jeanne.
Thank you.